Well, another slow start by the offense again, and they lose to an elite team again for the fifth time this year. They lost twice to the Vikings, which were not as close as they seemed. They lost to the Lions twice, one of them embarrassing, the other probably would have been embarrassing if they had all their starters on defense. And a game in the Eagles that many consider a fluke because it's in Brazil, but whatever. But even if you take that game out, they are 0-4 against all these elite teams. Everybody before this was talking about how, well, not everybody, but some people were talking about Packers being underrated and that they could go on a run. When you look at what they do in big games, I don't see how you see that. They look like pretenders when you see that. They start out too slow on offense like almost every game, except for the second Lions game, but how much can you take out of that because most of their starters were out that game. The Lions defense were, so well, actually they started slow in that game too, but that was like the only game they were pretty close in. And how much can you take out of that? Because that's the game where they had all their defense out. In the first game, they got embarrassed on when they had everybody at Lambeau Field. And the two Vikings games were really not as close as they seemed, especially this second game here. The offense has been the problem in these big games. They start out way too slow. Jordan Love has not been that great. I don't think he's the huge issue, but he hasn't been great early on in these big games. The wide receivers, I thought, coming into the season were a little underrated. Not like best in the division. I mean, that's clearly the Minnesota Vikings. They're the best in the division when it comes to wide receiver. But they just drop balls consistently. Jaden Reed, pretty good, but he has drops. Christian Watson, he can make some big plays, but also some big mistakes. Dontavian Wicks, haven't really heard much of him recently, but early on in the season, he had some drops. All these receivers pretty much have potential, but also have a lot of these mistakes too. The only one that doesn't and seems to perform consistently without these mistakes is Tucker Kraft. But every other receiver, it's like, yeah, they got potential, but they also make these big mistakes. You know, they are just frauds to me. If you consider Super Bowl teams, the Packers are pretenders when it comes to that. They are frauds. They are a solid team that can beat good teams, but they cannot beat great teams. And as it's looking, they're probably going to be quick out in the playoffs because now they're the 7th seed and they're probably going to have to go to Philadelphia and they're probably going to get waxed in that game. If they somehow get the 6th seed, I could see them beating the Rams, but all the Commanders have to do is beat the Cowboys again, and the Packers are getting the 7th seed. In that game, they'll probably start out slow yet again. The Eagles will get out ahead. They'll make it a little closer than it looks at the end, but the Eagles will ultimately pull away. It'll be like 34-27 or 30-22. It'll look closer than it does. In these big games, honestly, it seems like the offense has been more at fault than the defense because of the slow start. Especially in the first Minnesota Vikings game, everybody was like, oh, the defense gave up 28 points in the first half. Well, when your quarterback throws 2 interceptions early in that game and your kicker misses like, 1 or 2 field goals, it's hard to stop that when your offense has been that bad. And in the second half, they actually kind of brought the offense back in the game. And they only gave up like 3 points in the second half, so that game wasn't really on the defense when you look at it. It was a slow start by the offense. The first game against the Lions, they only gave up 17 points the whole game because one of them was a pick six. Ended up being 14-24. So the defense really held Detroit to 17 points. In this game, it wasn't that great, but it may have been. If your offense was actually good enough, it might have been enough to win. And that's what we were saying all this offseason. The defense has to be just half as good. Well, it's half as good. Is it enough to win? If your offense, like we thought, would be good, yes, but it's been inconsistent. The offense has. You know, the defense has bailed them out sometimes in these big games. You know, it helped them in the Texans game to win. You know, when the offense was just absolutely sluggish, the defense kept them in the game. The first Minnesota Vikings game, the first Lions game, and this game not as much, but it wasn't, the offense didn't help them at all in this game. seems like the offense has been, if you could say, more at fault than the defense in these games. So I don't think Jeff Hafley has really been that bad this year, and even the times that they do look bad, it seems like a good chunk of it is on the players rather than him. So definitely would rather take Jeff Hafley's defense than the past couple years, but yeah, is the offense does them no favors at times, and it's just they're pretenders is all there is. When you look at these games against these elite teams, you just look at them and say, they're not bad, but the other teams are playing, they're just better than you. Like, they're on a different level than you. Some people were saying, oh, you got to consider the Packers on the same tier as the Lions, Vikings, Eagles, and if you look at their record and how they play in those games, they're not. The other teams are just simply better than them. And it's not necessarily, a bad thing, but it's still. I thought coming the season they'd beat at least one of these elite teams. I thought they'd beat the Lions once. Had the Lions going 13-4 this year and winning the division and losing in the Super Bowl, but I thought the Packers would at least beat them once, and they got embarrassed the first time. And the second game, if the defense had all their starters, they probably would have gotten embarrassed, or it wouldn't have been close anyway. Jordan Love, he's been playing well. He's been playing better than when he did earlier in the season, but is it really that great? It's good, but is it like anything special? Like, no. Like, he doesn't turn the ball over, but like, he also doesn't really make anything that makes you go, wow, consistently. And then especially in these games after like the bye week, some of these games it's like, oh, he didn't really do anything special. He just did what he needed to do. Not really anything that make you go, oh yeah, he can win you a Super Bowl. Nothing like that. He's been not as good as he was in the last year in the second half of the season, which kind of expected. Didn't think he'd be quite that good, but they paid him like a bunch of money, and they thought he'd be a quarterback that could possibly probably take him to a Super Bowl with the money. And he's been a quarterback that's been like, he can start the games and get you to the playoffs, but can he win you these big games when you're gonna have to go on the road against Eagles, Vikings, Lions? Can he win these games? Because it doesn't look like it. Though even when he's been playing better these past couple weeks, can he win these games? Don't know. Matt LaFleur, not saying fire him because he's probably like the 8th or 9th best coach in the league, but can he win you a Super Bowl? Because we've seen him with Aaron Rodgers in those, 3 years, and some of those decisions he made, you're like, oh, that's not good. So can he win you a Super Bowl? I don't know. Like, he can definitely coach and get you to the playoffs, and he's probably like the 8th or 9th best coach in the league, but is he good enough to win a Super Bowl? I'm not sure yet. Not saying to get rid of them, but are they good enough to win you a Super Bowl? I'm not sure yet. And the division is getting harder. The Vikings and Lions look like juggernauts. The Lions not quite as much as they did earlier because of the injuries, but they're still very good. Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, just give him the coach of the year already. He has 14 wins with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold. Not that he's bad, but 14 wins with Sam Darnold. Like, give this man the coach of the year already. And you look at these coaches in the division, O'Connell, LaFleur, and Campbell, it's easily the best division in football. The Lions, I think, could win the Super Bowl. Vikings could win the Super Bowl. Packers can't win the Super Bowl, but they're still a solid team. We'll see what they do next year. And it's kind of just sucks as a Packer fan because, you had LaFleur, who you would say like a year or two ago is probably like the best coach in the division, but now it's like he's probably the 3rd best coach in the division because Campbell, what he did with the Lions is looking good. O'Connell, what he's doing with the Vikings, and Sam Darnold is very good. So if you rank the coaches, he's probably 3rd, maybe 2nd, but probably 3rd best coach in the division. Not that that's saying he's bad, but it just makes it tougher when you trying to win a Super Bowl in a loaded division. So this season, they're going to win more games, the Packers are, but it's still a little disappointing because they're probably not going to make it as far in the playoffs. I don't see them beating the Eagles. Maybe if they get lucky and get the 6th seed and play the Rams, maybe, but they're probably going to face the Eagles, and they're probably going to get destroyed and make it closer than it really was, or what it really would be, the outcome will be. We'll see what they do next year. It'll be interesting to see how Jordan Love plays throughout the whole season. Will he start slow again and get hot, or will he become MVP? We'll see. And the defense, it's been better, but it's still not quite the same. They gotta get rid of some players. Like Stokes is not good. Some of the defensive line when they're playing against elite opponents has been disappointing. They cannot get to the quarterback. I mean, Sam Darnold had all day to throw yesterday. So defense, it's been better, but like it's got some work to do. But I'd take it over many of the past years that they had. But yeah, the Packers are frauds. They are not Super Bowl contenders. They are not as good as what everybody seems. The future does look fairly good, even though the division is tough, but to say that they are Super Bowl contenders and make a run, I don't see it. They're 0-5 against elite teams. They're just not on the same level. They can't beat them. They are not Super Bowl good enough, and that's just that. That's the fact. They are just not Super Bowl ready. Maybe they will be next year. We'll see. It's going to be hard in this division, but as of right now, they are not Super Bowl contenders and are probably going to lose in round 1.